everybody that you talk to now is talking about recreational hunting land and hunting land and recreational land agents.
That's
are
right.
Everywhere
Yeah.
you look now.
You're right.
I'll throw my hat in that ring a little bit too. And one thing, Chris, that when we think about a piece of land, we're really thinking about hunting.
Oh, I'm thinking that's
hunting,
right.
Hunting
Yeah.
property, setting the property up for hunting, minimum.
Laying up wind directions,
right.
field, yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's what we think about. But, as working with customers are looking to buy, a lot of people, they need somewhere maybe they can build on. A lot of people, the family, you need a multi-use property.
Right.
So multi-use property, laying out a multi-use property, if they also want to hunt on it. We got to talking about that and brought in a guest that got
That's
a
right.
great case study on that, because I think
100%.
you helped set up a property,
Yeah.
and we're going to get some good tax tips right here for tax
right.
season. Isn't that right?
That's right.
Hope so.
Got to bring your tax man in, especially this close to deadline,
Yeah. So we got a good friend of yours, Pat Davidson. Pat's a landowner, a hunter. I think he does your business.
On CPA, yeah.
CPA work.
Pat, tell us a little bit about yourself, brother.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Yeah.
My name's Pat Davidson. I'm a CPA here in town, and I've been in the business 30-plus years. But love the outdoors, love the woods, and excited to talk about a project that Chris helped me get going. And so I'm glad to be here.
Right.
Yeah.
You kind of been around the outdoors. Your dad was an old timber man, because me and you talked about that when I first moved all my tax stuff to you, and some Knoxville County.
Yeah, that's
Knoxville
right.
County stuff in the past. And,
grew up going to the woods and seeing those skidders and smelling diesel and
that's
watching
awesome.
the men sit around with their hands on the fire in the morning.
That's it. It was a tough job back in. I think it's tougher now on it of it. It was, Brent, the neat part is Pat had hunted this particular piece of property, and I'm going to let him kind of tell the history of it. I think he hunted for 10 years, probably 10 or 12 years.
10.
You leased it?
Yeah.
And it was behind his house. It was 190 acres right behind Pat's house.
That's right.
Pat had a beautiful house with a lake and
it warehouse or land? Was it
no,
timber
it was
land, private.
It was private. Okay. It was private land, and the crazy part of it is, and it makes you feel good. It made me feel good that I was part of the project, and I told Pat how much it meant to me. That was my first college project. Was that piece of land? So the owner before that, and Pat and him were really good friends. He kind of turned it over. I called him out of the field, and I said, "Look, I want to paint your boundary lines, mark your place, a little hunting swap out."
1982. When you were in college.
That's about 91. But anyway, we just neutered out a great guy and highest respect for him, and he had that track, and so he let me, I went in and marked his property line. It was good for me, good for him. I got to hunt, and my mama lived right there close to Pat at the time, and so it was I still got paint on those trees that I painted 25 years ago.
That's pretty cool.
And but anyway, Pat had been hunting it for years, and me and him had talked about it. Man, I'd like to get a property, and I'd love to be able to get that one. And it just sometimes the stars line up.
I'll say to get something like that.
Yeah,
that
joins him. That joins him. That's right. So I'm gonna let Pat. He was. I think he was at the time wanting to cut the timber. That's what started all of it.
Yeah.
And
threat of a clear cut next
year. Absolutely. It motivates you.
Right, because Pat's yard, when I tell you his place is neat, it's tweezer cut neat right up to the property line. And a lot of people, Brent, we see this, and a lot of people that have beautiful woods, they'll clear right up to the property line and beautify it like a state park. And that's what Pat's reminds me of. Got a walk bridge and the fish pond, but it went right to the property line. So in our minds, in his mind, he thinking clear cut. And that was what was going to go on. I mean, it was fixing to get cut. That stuff was, I had thinned that timber 20 years ago. It's crazy. Time goes by. And it was planted in the 80s, early 80s, 83, 84. And then we thinned it, and then it was time to, cash in. Yeah. I mean, it was old enough and big, and
makes you nervous.
Yeah. Listen, it would have, because when you pull in the Pats, you're looking through his backyard, you're looking at it.
Yeah.
And So me and Pat kind of got together and let's make us a plan.
Yeah, that's right.
And the plan was we didn't really think about, we were thinking about a buffer.
Yeah.
And how to
Not
protect.
buying the whole thing, but just
Yeah,
trying to get.
well, how to
That's right.
protect
Yeah.
Pat's interest in this thing.
Yeah, that's
And,
right.
you know, and it's never a good time to buy land, but a lot of times when you put it against the wall, you have to.
Yeah, that's right.
And that's kind of your take of it. Pat just didn't want to see a clear cut. I mean, this guy loves Midwest, rocks, you know, nature. I mean, you know, stone. I mean,
Turned into
he
a
does.
defensive move a little bit.
Yeah, that's right.
Protecting your investment.
That's
protecting
right.
What you got.
Yeah, the guy that Nudie owned it for a number of years,
Yes.
and he let us hunt on it, and my kids grew up back in those woods, and then he sold it, and the person that bought it, he and I had we had a gentleman's agreement. I was leasing it to hunt, and then we had a gentleman's agreement that if he ever got ready to sell it or do anything,
Give me first shot.
he'd
at
give
it.
me first shot. And
I'm gonna let Hunter's dog back in. Y'all
so,
keep going.
all right. So anyway, he called me and said, "Hey, I'm getting ready to clear cut it, and just want to let you know." And I said, "Okay, thanks for letting me know." And I said, "Can we work out something, and at least let me buy enough to protect me?" And then there's a nice creek
That was
coming
beautiful.
right
That's
behind
right.
us,
Yep.
and to
Yep.
get me back behind that creek. And like you said, a defensive move, wanted to protect it. And like I said, my kids grew up
Yeah.
back there, and one of my daughters actually got married right across that drawbridge
Right.
years ago. But
So it was a want, but it was a defense, and it was kind of like we had to, because if you didn't, it would change the whole outlook of everything you had. I mean, you know, we don't think about that, Brandon, in selling land, but a lot of times people will buy stuff for buffers, and we say, well, why would you want that? Because I don't want.
I
You
don't
know,
need it all.
right?
But I want
And Pat lived there. He's there every day. I mean, so we kind of we went and I looked at timber and
Well, you say that, and you were also already thinking about looking for a place.
right.
yeah, that's
what
right.
better? So I
That's
guess-
right.
I guess
and
what
it
better
made
than-
and it made it so, you know, because it's right there. I mean, I only had to get on the road to go on it.
And you had been hunting it already. It's not like you. were
That's
trained
right.
at this, so
I had already invested some money in
Right,
it,
have some shooting
with
houses
some
on it.
roads
Yeah.
and just some lanes.
You were familiar with it. And
Yeah.
so it was a chance not only to protect what you own, but maybe protect what you already had enjoyed hunting. And
That's right.
Over those years.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
You know, so
You know, it's funny all the time. You talk to somebody that leases land. When the owner comes through and cuts it, they're usually mad, and it never fails. Somebody says, "Well, you should have bought it."
yeah, that's right.
This is the only case
Well,
I can think of where that really
I
happened.
told him. He said, "Look, Chris, so we
That's the first time in history. That's the
We
only
talked-
time I can think of it really happened.
we had to strategize. So we
We
talked.
did, yeah.
Me and him
I can't
talked every day. And
Chris
I
helped
love
me a lot. He really did.
I love a strategy now.
He's my
and
strategist.
yeah, I gotta.
He's a good one.
I love to put it together, and it don't work all the time, but I win more times than I lose. But I knew the game, and I knew what we needed to do. So I knew the person that was cutting the timber, a friend of mine, and when they went in there, and buddy, they was cutting, and Pat was just like, God, if you went over and seen that, I said, yeah. so we was able to buy, I think the first purchased 25 acres.
Bought the 25 acres
yeah.
back in spring of 22.
That's right. Yeah.
And they cut it. They cut it that spring.
That
That's
spring.
right. Yeah.
And Brent, when I mean they cut it, they cut it. I mean they.
Now,
and
were you able to buy any before the cut, or this is after the cut?
No, I bought it before.
Before,
the cut. Yeah.
yeah.
You
So-
preserved the 25.
That's right.
Yes.
So the 25 acres.
so the 25 gave us a buffer,
I'm with you.
but and that was our idea. He could have bought all of it, but it was pricey.
The number that. Yeah.
Yes, and
Well, they probably knew. You know, look, a piece of property is worth more to the neighbor
That's right.
usually
Yeah.
than
Yeah.
anybody else. So
Yeah.
and
it's probably
and
typical
and
price.
In the 25 acres, you know,
Yeah.
I was willing to pay a premium for that.
right, because it
Just
was
right by me.
because you had your tail against the wall. You know,
That's
it's kind of
right.
one of those
That's right.
comps that it's really not a good comp. You know, we talk about comps all the time.
Yeah.
You know, you got somebody arm twisted behind their back, you can make them, you know, holler a little quicker than you can just
Yeah.
talking to them. But so we had to get it, and we could have got all of it, but it was. And I told Pat, I said, Pat, it's just not a good price. I keep up with every sale. I keep up with the going price. I knew what the stuff was, you know, bringing, and I said, I think we hold and let's just see. And there were some plans, I think, thrown out there, maybe some houses or something, talking. And I think that may have been a move where,
A little bit of move.
in your mind, well,
Yeah.
but Brent, you're a power guy. You've laid out subdivisions. It all sounds good till you have to start building roads, curbs, gutters, power, water. It sounds. You've seen it, Pat. You handle a lot of people that's in the real estate business and residential and build subdivisions. It all sounds good until you have to start paying for that cost.
Yep.
And you know, a cutover. I kept telling Pat, a cutover is not cheap to clean up. I mean, you get big piles, and it looks like a dang bomb hit it.
Yeah.
You know, it don't look great.
Yeah.
And he probably still has nightmares of hunting this beautiful, pristine forest, and then it's not a bomb hit it.
Was it pine plantation? Was it a hardwood mix? What was
Had
it?
some hardwood in the valleys, but most of it was clear cut in 80s, 83.
Okay, so it was replanted.
Yeah, it was replanted.
You said that.
We
You said you
thinned
had
it.
thinned 20 years.
But there were some little stands of hardwood down in those bottoms, and
especially back behind my house.
Uh-huh.
Creek,
that was the thing, Chris. Brent, there was a big creek that Pat keeps talking about, and it. We'll get into it a little later on some of the trail work, but the creek's beautiful, natural.
I'm kind of familiar. I've hunted with a friend of mine. It's that same bottom.
That's
not
right.
The same track, but from
and that creek runs through them too. That's right.
Creek.
Yeah, sure does.
Beautiful place in there.
Yes. So we kind of just sat back and waited. And I told Pat, I said, look, let's don't get antsy. Let's wait.
And so there's always a gamble in waiting too.
Yeah.
I mean, that's that risk. If
That's
you wait,
right.
You know,
But
the sales, somebody else may give them that number.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, I told Pat, I said, ain't no way in hell nobody's gonna pay that. And I
heard
said,
him tell me that.
yeah.
Before.
And I said, they ain't gonna do it. I said, but let's just see. And the timber cutting went. It took all summer to cut it. Didn't
Yeah,
it? They
it
cut it
did.
about all summer, spring to summer, cut through it, and you know how loggers are. Roads pushed up and dirt and this and piles, and it don't look good. I mean, a clear cut's not pretty, and so
But you had a 25-acre buffer. So
You had that buffer, and it
Yes.
sat there till the next spring.
it took a year to
we
put the
talked,
other.
and
in.
I'd kind of put it out of my mind and thought, you know what, I don't need it. I got this, and then we started talking.
That's
again.
right.
Your
And,
initial concern was satisfied by getting you the
Yes,
buffer.
that's right.
You were okay. You
was
had basically moved your line.
That's right.
Right,
Yeah.
but he was still been able to hunt it, and after it was cut. But once it's cut, you're like, God, Almighty, what are we hunting?
Well, in fact, we actually, I was still going to lease it.
That's right.
And we actually started doing some work on
Started
it.
doing a little cleaning up
And
just for some food plots. That's
you
right.
would say, man, I hate to see you putting all this money into it. And then
Yes, and I tell Pat, I said, Pat, I'm a proponent of, because I've done it and I've seen it and I've had it happen to me. You put money in somebody else's land, anything can happen, and a lot more can happen bad than good.
Yeah.
You add value to it.
Yes, and but anyway, that like I said, it's the thing I tell people, and they ask me about buying land. If there's a piece of land that's in your mind that you like, you kept in contact with him, Pat. That's what you did good.
Yeah.
You kept in contact with his emails, talk, text, and those stars are doing this. And when they line up, whoever's sitting in that line, who's going to end up with it?
Yeah.
And it's just like touching. I would call people on a piece of land. I got one that I call every year, and 25 acres. I call her every year. Hey, I just want to touch base with you. And no, we just think you're. I said, well, let's keep me in mind, because if you don't, if something happens,
timing.
you know this, death, divorce,
Yeah, that's right.
causes things
Life happens.
to somebody gets sick. And Pat was able to he got the talk back up, and then we was able to look at it, put some
So we're talking
true
about
values.
a year and a half gone by.
Yeah,
about a year.
Yeah, about
They're
a year.
still hung on that number. So they had a number.
Well, it kind of died. It was kind of
It
quiet.
kind of died, and I didn't press it because I kind of put it out of my mind, and then
It come back out
in the
blue.
spring
Yeah.
of 23, I got to thinking about it that summer,
Yeah.
May, and just like, hey, he hadn't come in and sprayed it,
And
he
it
hadn't
been
replanted
planted.
it.
That's right.
I thought it's going to be the
Yeah.
cheapest
Yes.
it's going to ever be right
now. That's what I told
And that's
Pat.
when we-
yeah. That's when we
Chris
kind
and I
of
talked.
That's you talk about spring of 23. Wasn't that lines up sort of when interest started interest rates were really getting higher then, so that probably may have helped keep it from selling.
Yeah.
Keep it,
Yeah.
make it sit there,
Yeah.
Well, and it just, it also goes back to a man's word, and he did what he said he would do.
That's right. Yeah.
And that means a lot to
That's
me.
absolutely.
He didn't have to, but he did.
That's right.
And negotiation started back, and a number was played around, and then Pat, we kind of worked us up a number that we thought was good, and put it there, and back and forth. And Pat called me and one day, and he said, "Hey, I think we can get it. And what do you think?" So I'm sitting there thinking, man, I'm going to spend this guy's money. But I said, it's a no-brainer.
Yep.
And I think some other friends of yours,
some of my other
Barry and
buddies-
them said, "Hey, Pat,
They said
pull the throttle.
man,
Yeah.
pull the hammer."
pull the trigger.
Yeah.
Just to stay sort of vague, but just for point of reference, that there was this number, something must have changed in the owner's world. So where did we come back in? Half of that number, 3/4? How much improvement?
It was, I'm going to tell you this, and I say it honestly, the number was in line of what it was worth.
Yeah.
I think both
Yeah,
people,
that's right.
you being the
Good
buyer
buyer,
and
good
him being the
seller.
seller,
Yeah, once
That's-
I
that's
think
once
it was a
clear
fair
cut, yeah.
number.
Yeah.
The other number was high. But look, when you get outside interference and somebody in your ear, and you got that buddy at church, and you got that buddy at the ball game, and you got that buddy at the Parks
That
house,
brother-in-law or
he's
somebody.
telling you, people tell you, "Oh man, that thing's worth it." They don't know.
Yeah.
They throw numbers out there.
Or real estate agents
Or
they're
blow
looking
smoke.
at comps on land.
They
That's
can,
one thing
yeah.
I've talking to you and looking at. It's
Yeah.
one thing to run comps on houses, but comps on land
And I'm gonna tell you about a comp on land.
land's just so unique. Every one of those
If
properties.
Pat come to me and said, "Chris, I need you to find me a $5,000 an acre comp," I could go find it. But would that represent that cost? No, it wouldn't. But I could find it. I could find you 3, and I could get you an appraisal on that. They're almost like an appraisal for hire. And I'm not saying that, but
you just got to be careful.
you got to be careful.
You got to have reasonable expectations.
And
You gotta be
look,
careful.
I mean, Brent, even track you looked at, you showed me the numbers. You said, "Chris, this track is, look, man, I'm seeing
This
numbers
supports
here,
it."
here, here."
Yeah.
And the first thing I said is, not worth that. And because I buy the ones that never hit the markets, but I buy the ones that are, people died, they get them appraised,
and
then
those
we
are
get
probably
and-
closer representation of
Yeah.
real value.
Yeah.
They don't hit the market. And they don't,
That's right. And things is, look, you take a piece of land, 40 acres, hunting land, $1,500 an acre. Hunting land with a house plot, $2,000 an acre, $2,500. I mean, that's what people could justify the prices. But anyway, it was a good price, and Pat pulled the trigger on it. He didn't. What I liked about him, he wasn't tire kicking. When I said, "Hey, you need to throttle down, let's do it," he did it, and he locked it down. And then the fun start happening.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I said, "Look, Pat, I was fired up about it. I mean, I was more fired up, not more than him, but I was.
Yeah,
it
and
was
so this
really
is
a
where
great thing.
We got to where we led into this thing, talking
Yeah.
about sort of multi-use type properties, and that's what were you looking for out of a property?
Yeah, I was. We've always, even with our home, we have 4 kids and I've got 7 grandkids. So when we
That's awesome.
have everybody home, we've got a
You
house
want
full.
to be central.
But we've
want
always
something
wanted to
that
be
makes-
central. When our kids were growing up, we wanted their friends to come to our house. That's why we built a pool and all that kind
Right.
of stuff. So it's Grand Central Station. So this was just another avenue to expand that, to have some hunting land for my kids and my grandkids, and then like Chris said earlier, 4-wheelers and side-by-sides. And so that was kind of our vision for the property. And we've named the property Bluebird Acres because we love bluebirds. 'Cause
Right.
they, to me, they represent joy,
Yeah, sure.
bluebird of happiness. But that's what we named it. But that was kind of the
Yeah.
vision for it, was just mainly for my kids and grandkids. And I've told all my kids, I said, listen, in fact, the day we closed on it, I sent them all a text and said, "Okay, Mom and Dad, we've done our part. House plots.
Carry this thing on.
Free house
Yeah.
plots."
Yeah. That's-
So
But the cool part, Brent, I was, my whole mind's thinking, all right, I'm fixing to make him the best hunting track that I can make him. So I'm laying food plots. I'm looking at directions, how Pat to get to his. He don't understand how
ability,
much.
like
He don't
wind
understand how much
direction.
I think things.
Yeah.
But I'd ask him, Pat, how do you get to this land? How would you go? Well, I'd go this way, and I'd go this way. So okay. So I was doing what I do.
Yeah.
how the wind
Making
directions.
sure the way he was going to go.
I wanted him
take him through the cover.
Right,
Through the bed
and I knew when his kids get off at Thanksgiving, Christmas to hunt, that if I put his fields in directions, that they would have the most hunting days that they could hunt those days if we have a north or south wind.
Mm-hmm.
You know, east wind, you flip a coin on that. You don't know about east is no good for man nor beast, you know. But so I was letting out. So Pat's like, Chris, I want to put some trails. I said, well, okay. And I didn't dawn.
He started losing you a little bit.
Well, I said, I didn't know if he wanted, because most people don't ask for trails.
Yeah.
Especially
he
through the
side
heart.
by side or 4-wheel trails. You think about that track mitt ball at
Yes.
Bud National.
Right. And so Pat was like, no, I want some trails. I want to beautify those hills. And I said, okay. So I went up through there and I flagged some stuff. And he said, yeah, I like that. And I said, okay. So we as we're getting the food plots laid out, we laid about 6-7 acres of good food plots. Because I want him to have some good food plots, good shooting houses, because he was going to keep it. He wasn't. He wasn't flipping it.
Place, that's
it's a legacy place.
Upgraded all my shooting houses.
It's going to be a family legacy. That's right. and it's going to be a family legacy. It is, and that's what it's really neat. So we laying out. So we get the bulldozers, and we had mulchers, track hoe, bulldozers, tractors. We had the whole. We done it.
Yeah.
And had good weather, and then we started some earlier, and then we got wet on us, and then we come back and really exploded because the timing of his closing, I think, was a little quirky. So we had some good thoughts, and I planned this thing. I drew it out, and I'd move stuff and draw and move stuff. So anyway, we started putting trails through there. Pat said, man, Chris, that trail's so pretty up through there, but we had my mind was thinking, okay, it had some topography.
You still want to huntability. You still want to hunt. Like
and so I'm still thinking, all right, so I got past some trails down this side property line, this side of property line. The heart of the watermelon still good. Yeah. No pressure on the deer. I'm thinking that whole thing.
And I work these recreational trails to access to some of the food plots too. So
to knock on wood. And I texted to Pat last night because I was sitting in the deer stand figuring we put in 4.5 miles of trails on 190 acres. And we got trails through the middle, and I was just like, ugh, I wanted to puke, but I didn't. It didn't dawn on him until he sent me pictures of him and his grandkids
enjoying it,
riding, playing in the creek. And I look back, I said, I'm missing this game. And a lot of people's missing it because that's what you wanted.
Yeah, that's right.
That you wanted hunting, but you wanted enjoyment. And those kids, like I told, I was being funny, but you go to Pat's house, and I always park over around this by a shed, and I look when they out there and the kids are swimming and fun. But when they come to Pat's, his grandchildren, it's like Wolf Lodge. They're swimming. They got an outdoor kitchen. They're cooking. They're getting on these. He's got razors. He's got 4-wheelers. He's got a side by side, and they're riding trails. And you talking about neat? It become
highest and best use.
Highest and best use. It become highest and best use, and it was it made me. It humbled me to see a person love that piece of land, just like I love land. And Pat. His family, Miss Lanita, would thank me. She says, Chris, I appreciate you. That makes a man feel good. And it made me, because I'm close to Pat and think the world of him, but he was able to fulfill everything.
Yeah.
Paid off waiting too.
Yeah, it is. It's just a game.
The day I go back there and don't thank God.
Yeah.
We ride by as the Lord, thank you for working this out. And in fact, I had my grandsons out there.
Right.
And
to here last week,
y'all had a pretty good season hunting, hadn't you?
Yeah,
man, they've killed some nice bucks. I'm gonna get you a picture of that one that John Patrick killed.
Some nice bucks, and it
seeing deer all the time. It's cool, and it's gonna get Brent. You know this. It's a clean slate.
Yeah.
So it's a 1.5-year-old cut over now, and we planted it. We planted pines, and it's got we put rock crossings in some of the ditches.
The roads you got some roads.
Yeah, with them concrete. Put those. Concrete crossing some of them.
Most of our trails, like I wanted trails along all the creek with a creek swing.
Because he loves to see that beauty.
We like to see that, but yeah, we've got them along all the creeks.
But Brent, we put them down one side of the creek, and then Pastor Chris, I think I want another side. I said, what?
That's right. That's true.
I said, okay. So we put some down the other side. So, but you feel like you're driving on a 1,000-acre tract.
Yeah.
He's got more roads on that tract than I got on our farm.
Yeah.
I mean, it's no question because of the, and they're cool roads. They're going.
They're nice. Yeah.
And he's got a daughter that got Sunshine Stables, right?
Yeah.
And they do horse riding, therapeutic horse riding for people. Yeah. And you know, Patty said, hey, you know, Anna can come over here and unload these horses and ride over the whole place.
Yeah.
And then that's cool stuff. That's a thing where
you can't put a dollar value on it.
Man.
Yeah, you really can't.
And those kids playing
Especially
that
to
creek.
have it, again, right outside your back door.
I mean, five minutes, I can be in a shooting stand, and
but you know,
now you're just bragging.
Well,
but the cool part is, Brent, is you know, Little Creek ain't a foot and a half deep at the most.
Yeah, it's not real deep. Yeah,
but you would think it's at the ocean. Them kids in that creek, and I mean, Lou, they started during turkey season in that creek, cold, and I mean, it's awesome. But you know, like we was talking about, Pat, those kids are never gonna forget coming to you and Miss Lanita's.
Yeah,
it's like a resort. I mean, they can do what they want to do. They can ride, swim, do anything, and it's all right there.
That's what we wanted. And I kept tell all of them, I said, keep them coming, keep these grandkids coming, and
that's awesome.
Keep bringing them on.
Yeah,
that is awesome, and it just worked, Brandon. It just, and there's other people out there that may not be as particular, I'm gonna say that, about hunting as we would.
Yeah,
but would love to have a fish pond or, you know, riding or just whatever you want to do. It's yours.
Multi-use.
Yeah, you can do anything.
Again,
you know,
most people making that kind of investment have to be able to cost justify it with these other things, other than just 2.5 or 3 months out of the year for hunting. You know, I mean, most people, you know, you
like me
else to do. You know,
I don't
live on it. It's gonna be where you live. It's gonna
right.
be where you do these other things and other family interests, and that's. We don't think about that a whole lot in the hunting sphere, but you know, talk to people.
It's a lot of
land,
things. You know, a lot of people, Pat, they leave their hunting land. If they don't turkey hunt, they don't go back till the next October or September to bush hog.
Yeah.
You know, and the lucky thing is you use yours all the time. And look, we got him a tractor, man. He's got him. He got him a Kubota tractor, and John Patrick's.
My son's been out there.
He's been out there, and look, we put him on there.
He gets to have all the fun.
I try to help him. You know, try to help him lay out. But I remember a guy showed me how to run a tractor.
Yeah.
My daddy didn't know how to run a tractor, and I had an old man, Mr. Wayman Goodman, showed me how to run a tractor, and I never forgot that. So when Pat asked me, man, would you go out there? And I said, yes, 100%, I'd love to. And showed him how you run the bush hog a little low, pick it up. You know, that's the only way you'll know is somebody show you.
Yeah.
And then you do it. But, man, he kept up. He had those. Look, when I went over to plant for Pat, John Patrick had that place look like a golf course. He had it mowed, and we had, you know, we stumpy, and we got linemen. You know how pine trees are. They'll suck the ground, drive nutrients. That's just how they are, and they're 40 years old. So we got to do some linemen coming up. But John Patrick had them fields, Brent. He had them disced so good that you could shoot a. I mean, they were just level, and he done right what I told him. I said, look, disc them with the gains in and turn them straight. I mean, and that part is enjoyment too.
Yeah, I was wondering, are you getting into that a little bit too?
Yeah, I want to. John Patrick did most of my tractor work because I was working, but he did real good.
And eventually Pat will get where he's, you know, once you retire, I mean, that's what you'll do.
Yeah.
You'll keep up with that property and work on it. And it's awesome. For me to see it, and I know I've told you, and I wasn't just blowing smoke. I really enjoyed watching y'all enjoy that property.
Well, you
cool.
helped me a lot, man.
That was cool, man.
Chris advised me, and he gave me direction, and I know I probably tested
criticism sometimes too, probably.
Yeah, I probably tested his nerves a few times because I'd be like, hey, can we go back and pull some of these stumps off on the trail?
Pat's thinking ahead. You know, I'm thinking, give him this, but Pat's thinking, our grandkid's going to hang that pine stump and flip that Range Rover on top of his onion. So we put trees where they couldn't go down hills. And
that's true.
You know, it was cool stuff. Yeah, we did. We went back and Pat would mark stumps. And it was smart because, like, in curve, you know kids do. You give them this much curve, they're going to take the inside lane all the time. So I had to think in my mind because one of them was a pretty steep that track's got some topography to it.
Yeah, it's got those two ridges.
Those two ridges
I guess.
are, and one of them's
Which is
pretty good,
nice.
Brent. One of them's 75 foot high ridge. You know what I'm talking
me and
about?
Ken Ivy, that same ridge.
Yeah.
Goes back to me and Ken Ivy toted a 153-inch 10-pointer.
Right.
One year, New Year's Eve, I think.
Yeah. So I had to design that road so them kids wasn't going straight up or straight down.
Yep.
So we made a kind of switchback.
Yeah.
I made it where it switched back. It wasn't as steep, and it worked out perfect. I mean, it's worked out good, and I don't know. It was a cool thing. But look, we got him here, and let's kind of educate some people on some land and some tax stuff.
Yeah.
I mean that. You know, Pat's got a Pat. What do you call what's the business called?
Davidson and Company.
Yeah, Davidson and Company. Tax,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And you do all sorts of taxes as far as
We do. We work mainly with businesses,
Right.
business clients and their owners.
yes.
Planning and tax returns and that
Right.
kind of thing. But that's kind of our forte. But
Yeah.
I've been in the business 30 plus years. Started out in Birmingham working with
Corporate stuff,
big firms,
corporate firm.
big
Are you
big
from,
firms.
from Alabama, from Birmingham area?
No. We I finished high school in DeKalb, Mississippi.
Okay.
Scuba.
Went to Scuba for 2 years, and then I
Yeah.
transferred, graduated at the University of Alabama. And that's where I met my wife, and we've been married 40 years.
That's
this
awesome,
August.
man. You wouldn't think he's that old. Look at him. Man got hair that good. He's the only one ain't got a hat on,
It's
Brent.
got some gray in
Yeah.
it, though.
That's all right. Look, I'd love to have a head full of gray hair. Well, so you being in accounting and accounting, we talked about it some. I would love to be able to dispel a few things. So I said early on, there's a lot of people in the recreational property and land sales. It's just blowing up.
Yeah.
You know, you see new brokerages pop up every time you turn around. There's another agent, and myself included. You know, I got my real estate license with. You know, I really probably want to try to get into selling more houses because of more volume. But
Yeah.
I got into it because of a love for recreational property, and hunting land, and commercial property. But man, there's a lot of people doing it. It's a hot market right now. People really like it. People are buying it, and there's a lot of terminology that gets thrown around, and just like in anything else, in hunting, fishing,
That's right.
in sports, you know, people throw out terms, and sometimes somebody might be a little, nervous to add. You don't want to look foolish, and don't want to add. Just you'll hear things like, just for example, in land, people talk about capital gains or 1031 exchanges, 1031 money. There's a lot of things people talk about that maybe some confusion around.
Yep.
So I thought, we'd get in here and we'd talk through some of these things or the process.
Sure.
Pat, let's dig in. Let's do an easy one. You have a piece of property and you sell it. Okay.
Yep.
So what type of tax you're going to pay? A capital gains on that property
right.
most of the time if your basis is
Yeah.
not right. And it kind of explained that capital gains how it would work if your basis is. I guess we need to tell them what a basis is.
That's right.
Yeah.
Let's tell them what a. So I just purchased let's make it easy. I just purchased $100,000 piece of property. Okay, timberland.
Yep.
So I that was my price. So I have to. Most people need to go to their accountant and to figure out a basis on that piece of land that they purchased. They purchased, right?
Yep.
So kind of break that down on that
that's
basis,
right.
what it would do.
Yeah, so you capital gains, you hear that term, capital gains tax, which actually capital gains taxes, that's good because the rates are lower than like your ordinary income tax rate, which you would pay on your other income, your wages and that kind of thing. But so you want it to be capital gains, and Chris is in that example, if you bought a $100,000 piece of land, if you held it over a year, which you would have a long-term capital gains tax, which is the best. If you sell it, and if you hadn't held it a year, it's short-term, so you pay
a higher rate.
You pay the ordinary rates, just like wages or anything like that. So you want long-term capital gains, but so with real property, your basis is going to be what you originally paid for it. So you paid $100,000 for it, but you may not sell it for 5 or 10 years. So when you go to sell it, let's say you sell it for $200,000. So the first thing I would ask is, well, Chris, what how much money have you put into it? Have you made improvements on it? Have you planted it? That kind of thing. So you would have to add in those items. If you spent $50,000 of improvements over the years, then your basis would be your initial cost of $100,000, and then the improvements that you put in it, $50,000.
Right.
So that puts it at $150,000.
So people really need to keep up with every improvement, culverts, road work.
That's right.
At the best fire lanes,
Yep.
best their ability, reforestation cost.
Yep.
Raising that basis lowers your tax.
That's exactly right. So in that example, if he sold it for $200,000 and he had $150,000 in it, he'd have a $50,000 capital gain. And if it's long term, most time there's two different rates, 15% and 20%. But unless it gets up over $500,000, you'd pay 15% federal tax on it, which is not a bad tax bite if you're paying $15,000,
Right.
15% on
But
$50,000.
income tax.
It's income tax, yeah. And then you got Mississippi tax, it's 5%. But in certain circumstances with Mississippi, and a lot of people miss this, but if you have the property in an LLC, or if it's rental property or anything, or really it's any business, if you completely sell all the assets out of that LLC or that business and close it down, the state of Mississippi has a provision where you don't pay any Mississippi tax on that. It's 5%, and you get up into some pretty hefty gains, and that can add up really quick. So a lot of people miss that. So if you got a piece of property, say in an LLC, and you decide to sell out, you sell that piece of property, close it down, you can avoid Mississippi tax
By
and only
selling
pay
out the whole LLC.
Yep, and only pay in 5%. And I've seen we've used that provision quite often. I had a client last few years sold out all his businesses for about $15 million. And he avoided Mississippi tax on that, and 5% of that. I
Sure,
don't have my calculator in front of me.
It's a lot.
But it's a lot of it's a lot of money. But
Right.
But your basis is tax basis is what you paid for it,
$650,000. I
Yeah.
think.
and then your improvements. Now, a question we get a lot of times is somebody they'll bring us a closing statement, a HUD one, where they've sold some property. I'm like, well, what's your basis? And they're like, man, I
bought it.
that.
I gave to me or whatever.
Yeah, or I inherited that from my dad or my mom, or they gave it to me. So that question comes up a lot. So if they inherited it and their parents are dead, then you got to go back to when they died. When they died.
Step
so
up basis.
you get a step up. Mm-hmm. So I'll ask them, say, well, when they passed away, about how much was it worth? And a lot of times they'll just give me an estimate, and I don't get too anal about that, because as long as it's reasonable,
That's right.
We'll go with that number.
But a lot of times estates, and I'm doing one right now.
Mm-hmm.
Lady died. She died. She had 3 sons. They hired me to go cruise the timber, and they hired a guy to do the
right.
And they did it and I know that's what they were doing.
Well, that's the best case scenario.
They
that's
were
good
establishing that basis. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of times we don't have that. Ideally, that's what you want, is an appraisal
at death,
at the date of death. Now,
Yeah.
Now, if somebody just let's say that it was gifted to you, so let's say a mom or dad gifted it to them,
Not inherited, no die.
not inherited, but
Gifted before they
died,
passed.
then your tax basis becomes whatever they paid for it.
There's no step up.
There's no step up,
okay.
right? It carries over to them, but
Your basis essentially becomes what theirs would have been.
that's exactly right.
And then where it gets hairy at, if they've had it for 40 years, they may not have but $300-400 an acre in that thing. Yeah,
That's exactly right.
and you get into that a lot.
We
don't you?
run into that all the time.
Yeah. And then people, that's what makes you hear people say, I ain't selling, I'd pay all them taxes. That's where that terminology, Brent,
right.
comes from.
Yeah. And you hear people say that, Brent, just like what Chris said, I'm going to pay all those taxes. But in reality, if it's capital gains rate, 15%, 20% max, that's not a bad, our clients, they'll stress out about taxes.
Yeah.
I mean, we all do, but sometimes I say, well, really, that's not a bad tax price to cash out.
Yeah.
They'll go buy a $100,000 truck, they don't want to pay $5,000 for taxes.
The other side of that is, I don't want to pay all those taxes. Well, you didn't buy the land either. You didn't pay for
Well,
the
that's a
land
good
either.
point. Yeah, that's a good
You got
point.
zero
But
investment
you're
in it.
right. You're
That's a
right,
good
Pat.
point.
A lot of the old school guys, and Brent, I ain't going to say no names, but the one that passed away, and I've helped him. He wouldn't sell a tree. He'd let them die because he didn't want to pay the government any taxes.
Yeah.
And I told his son's a great friend of mine, and I'm managing their property now. I'm But I said, listen, your daddy lost hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of timber because he didn't want to pay $5,000 worth of taxes. and that is very true.
Outsmart ourselves.
Outsmart ourselves. Blew down, and I mean, bugs eat it up. I said, man, you need to cut that timber. Nah, I ain't paying those taxes on that. It was just, people get real funny. I ain't telling you nothing.
That's right.
Nobody wants to come and say, Pat, man, look, I can't wait to pay these taxes.
No, that's right.
You don't get that.
Yeah, we try to minimize them as much as we can, within the legal limits of the law.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right. Pat, what about and Brent said it, a 1031?
Yeah, 1031.
That's thrown out a lot.
Yeah, you hear
people,
and land sales and a lot of
people blow it out there and don't even know what it is.
That's right. And 1031 exchange, and I call it a swap. Some people call it a swap,
like-kind swap.
Like-kind exchange.
But 1031 it's just a code section in the Internal Revenue Code. The statute, Title 26 of the U.S. Code is all the income tax law, and Section 1031 is the code section where that is found. But what a like-kind exchange is, and now used to you could do it on about anything, equipment and real estate, real property. But now you can only do it on real property. Okay. So if you got a piece of property and you sell it, and it's actually a mandatory provision unless you elect out of it. But if you sell a piece of property, and let's use that example we had a while ago,
$100,000.
You made $50,000 on it, sold it for $200,000, had $150,000 in it, $50,000. If you wanted to do an exchange, a like-kind exchange, and get another piece of property, you can basically defer paying tax on that gain. You reduce your basis in your new property, so you roll it into that new property. So if Chris, in that example, if you sold that piece of property and if you handled it correctly,
agent, and
you have a qualified intermediary,
right, that holds
handle the money, so that $200,000 would go into that account.
It doesn't go into escrow. It goes to that intermediary.
Yes,
it goes in there. You can't touch it. It
cannot touch that money.
That's right.
Yeah, I want you to say that.
That's right.
Yeah.
But if you do that, once you sell it, you got 45 days to pick something else.
Identify.
And then you got to close on that new property within 180 days, which is 6 months basically. Right. So if you spend that $200,000 on a new property, let's say you buy a new piece of property for $300,000, then that $50,000 gain you had, your basis in your new property would be $250,000. You just reduce your basis.
Yeah, you're just actually rolling that stuff.
You're just rolling the gain is what you're doing.
Yeah,
and we have a lot of clients that do like-kind exchanges,
and some of them don't need them.
Some of them don't need them.
Yeah.
And I had a client the last year or two. They did it before I really got involved, and I mean they rolled about a $30,000 gain. I'm thinking,
well, you spent take it out
$2,000-$3,000 with a qualified intermediary.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say.
And you could have paid the tax on it, but
to a point where the administrative and the work to do it doesn't,
that's right.
justify.
I remember the first one I ever done, and I tell you, it's kind of funny because I would trade land, you know that, Pat, and then so I did one time 15 years ago, and it was $200,000 or $300,000. Well, when you close, you see that HUD, that $200,000 or $300,000, and it went to Johnson and Company.
Yeah.
Well, that was the intermediate. Well, it's funny, you kind of like looking at that check, and it's gone, and he holds that money, and so when he holds that money, you're bound to it.
Yeah. And
we had stuff identified, but in your mind, you think, man, I don't even got that money. Somebody else is holding your money.
Yeah, it's got to go to them, and
usually back then. Now I think that we did one 2 weeks ago for a client, $1,500 is what the guy charges to hold the money, and then send it in, and but you hear a lot of that, and where it's good at, Brent, if you did inherit something or you did get a piece of land that you owe nothing,
you may have a high or low basis, I guess.
Right.
Low basis.
I keep crossing up the high tax liability with low basis.
But you take
that's
it.
Right,
terminology.
Yeah, that's right.
But you take it, and once you sell that, and just say that let's make it easy. You got left 4 pieces of property from your granddaddy, okay? And they're not together. But then you find one that, Brent, you got one listed that's really nice, okay? And Pat, they can sell all of them and 1031 them into that new property.
That's right. Yeah.
How like do they need to be? Could it be like commercial, like
Can you do a
commercial
condo
property
for a piece of land?
Condo or
Yeah,
land, or does it?
yeah.
Okay, so
if it's real property with improvements on it.
real property. Okay.
Yeah, you can do it for raw land.
Yeah.
You can do raw land for commercial property, but it's pretty lenient. But it is
Like
just,
I remember reading in some of the real estate stuff that there was maybe at one time it was different. Like and it may be before it was limited to just real property.
Yeah.
There were some restrictions on what kind.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd encourage you to, if you get into it, to look at it again. But I'm pretty sure it's pretty flexible.
And Brent, you can identify, I think up to, is it 6 properties, 5 or 6? Well,
I can't remember.
You can identify up to a amount of property. So what we would do in the real world, if we knew we was going to sell one, I may identify one that ain't for sale. If I'm trying to go after this person to buy it, and you can identify these tracts.
Yeah.
'Cause, I mean, it's really between you and the agent.
Yeah,
it ain't like it's out there on the courthouse. It's not
That's
recorded.
right. It's not reported. That's right.
So I have identified several tracts and wind up buying the first tract, but I had 3 or 4 identified.
Backups, because you get.
I had
that
backups,
time
yeah.
If something happens here, if there's a
Because timing gets to
6
be,
months to close could
hey,
be.
timing,
not a lot of time,
timing
yeah.
gets to be, especially post-COVID now, things don't close fast.
Yeah.
And we've all gotten into that now. Used to I could close one in 2 weeks. It's different now.
Yeah.
Appraisals, bank, getting all this stuff together. It's really a lot different to do it.
Yeah.
And plus you throw this 1031 agent, because a lot of times those agents are nowhere. The last one we done, the guy was in Atlanta.
Yeah, we've used them in Tennessee and in New Orleans, and sometimes if you think you're going to do one, like I had 2 clients last year, they set up with a qualified intermediary, put the money in
I
it.
do ahead of time.
They did it, but then their time ran out, or they decided that, hey, I want the money, and they got to pay the tax.
So you can do that, though.
You can do that, yeah. So you're not locked in.
Penalty, or just it was
No,
pay the taxes you would have paid.
You just gonna pay the taxes you would have paid, and then you're paying the agent fee.
Right.
But I had one client, they decided to cash out all the rental property, so about $3.5–4 million, and then they've been looking for he
Properties
wanted
to buy.
He wanted one property. And he had all these motor properties. He wanted one big property somewhere, and he's been all over the Southeast, and then he didn't find what he wanted, so we're going to pay the tax.
And a lot of times, I try to...
something you don't want, buying something maybe...
Well, it happens a lot. Listen, I have had people call me and say, I get them all the time, Chris. I need a property for $220,000.
Yeah.
What do you, I mean, look, at time, I mean, and a lot of times... people will stress and buy the wrong property because they're scared that time's going, when all they got to do is back up. Right, Pat, and say, hey, man.
Pay the tax.
Right. So, Leslie, we sold one for him, $800,000. Well, we bought another tract in New Hope, no Gore place. So we sold one in Fayette, Alabama. Okay, 1031'd it. Bought one in Mississippi with it. The only thing about it, we sold it under an LLC, an Alabama LLC. By law, you got to replace it with that same LLC, and that's what we had. We did that for a year, kept it for 1 year, then we swapped it over to his other LLC. But it was $60,000 left in an account, and I had forgot about it. And they had so a guy called me about a year later, and said, "Hey, you got $60,000, in this account. We didn't use it." I said, we just cut him a check. We just paid the taxes. He just paid the taxes on it.
You pay the tax. So if the property you identify, if that transaction doesn't get all of that 1031 money you had to pay, you just pay the taxes on
what's left.
You pay
the
tax.
kitty.
That's right. That's right. If you get any boot, it's called boot, any kind of cash or any other anything else is taxable. Now you mentioned LLC, Chris, and that made me think about a lot of times. Like if you do have the property in an LLC, what we've done several times is, let's say the property gets ready to sell and you got 3 owners, you got to kick that property out to them individually,
and then
you may have some of the owners that don't want to do like kind, they just want the money, so you got to kick it out.
Ooh, it gets aggravating there, don't it?
You got to do a quick claim deed and kick it out
and get it into a deed, a fee simple deed that they own personally
in their own personal.
That's exactly what happened.
There's a lot of
we sold it out of his. we sold out his. We had to put it in his personal name. That was right. And then after he kept it a year, he deeded it to his LLC. That's what it was.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it was.
Yeah. And you like I said, if you get any cash, you got boot. We had one guy did last year. He sold some property, and we're going through the paperwork from the qualified intermediary, and all of a sudden we see in there where he had gotten $8,000 out, and he had to pay tax on that. I mean, it wasn't a lot of money, but if you get any cash, you got to pay. But it's a great vehicle to use.
It's a tool, I guess.
But you do hear people use it all the time. They'll
throw it out there.
Money or I got some money I got to roll over.
But a lot of people don't, because they do, just like they do get a little squirrely sometimes.
Yeah,
multiple owners. I mean, you think about that, Brent. You got 3 owners. 2 of them wants to cash out. One of them
got one trying to close now.
You got one of them that's got land. I mean, it's a. I don't want to pay the taxes, so I'm gonna exchange mine. It gets to it where it would be worth the $1,500.
That's
somebody
right. That's right. And you have to report it. There's a form you have to report it on
to navigate it
on your tax return. But
so transactionally, it feels a little bit like if you sell your personal residence and you've been there more than 36 months or whatever. If you if you make money and you put that in your next personal residence, you don't pay capital gains on the income.
Well, you don't have to do
kind of similar. You don't pay taxes
it's
on
similar
what you made if you buy something else.
Yeah, used to you had to do that with homes, but you don't have to do that anymore.
Okay.
Now with personal residences, if you sell your personal home and if you're married filing jointly, unless you make over $500,000 on it clear, you make that much. Yeah. You don't pay any tax, but that used to be used to be very similar. It used to be similar. Yeah,
putting it in something else like it, so you don't pay.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, that's right.
Pat, do you like personally people put their land in LLC?
I think it's a good practice for legal reasons.
Right.
And then I think another reason, if you put it in an LLC, it makes it, and you're legitimately spending money on it. You got a tree farm on it, or along with the recreational stuff. But I think it makes it easier to deduct some of your cost, related to the development of that property, and then any equipment you buy that you're using to develop it.
You can write it all.
Yeah, 4-wheelers and things like that.
Tractors.
You got to legitimately be using it.
Sure.
But I think it makes it a little easier from that standpoint.
And you think about it, Brandon. I mean, 4-wheeler wise, you're gonna use a 4-wheeler or tractor. All that stuff on a piece of property, and you look.
They're tools. I mean, y'all ride them for fun, but they are.
Look, Pat knows what it costs to develop one. You get into some money when you start digging stumps and popping and.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna recover this year.
Yeah. He said his tail's still hurting on.
Yeah. I'm limping into 25.
But but really, he done one now. When I did mine, as far as developing, I did it over the years. He did it all in one.
Yeah.
And which is cool. Now you don't have to do anything but maintain.
Yeah, that's right. And
there's some stuff we're gonna come back and do.
Yeah,
that's a smart way to do it if you can, because you did it to enjoy it with your family. You wouldn't want it to turn into ongoing work that could, that could go the other way real quick if it's constant work. If it's constant headache, if somebody's trying to DIY a lot of things. Yeah, it could go the other way quick on you.
Yeah,
you're doing it for enjoyment and recreation, it could turn into work and
that's right. And we were blessed. I was blessed we could go ahead and do some of it. And then some of them, my son-in-laws, and then another young man that's real close to our family. They get out there and they do stuff and they help and do things. But so they've kind of got some buy-in.
To have help.
And
that guy showed me his buck. That was a nice buck he killed.
Yeah, Taylor.
Yes.
Yeah, that's right.
He showed that to me. That's a nice buck.
Yeah, he's brought 2 deer to you.
2 good. I mean, that was 2 good. The one John Patrick.
Yeah,
we're gonna put that up. They were good deer.
2 deer this year, 2 big bucks.
And we've had 3.
I killed a small 8-point Christmas morning, but
3 8-points.
It was one I normally wouldn't have shot, but solid. It was Christmas morning.
Christmas Day,
it was cold, and I thought, man, I done put so much money in this place.
That's right. Made him feel good.
Christmas to me.
Hey, he come rolling in, and guess who was there? I was there taking
He was there, yeah. John Patrick said,
circle.
He said, you think christening him up at Christmas? I said, John Patrick,
Chris ain't gonna turn no dollar down.
This is like tax season.
That's it.
Yeah. You mean people are gonna drive up to hand him $100 bills? He ain't gonna be there to take it. Yeah,
I'm gonna tell you, much as I love people, I'll take that $100 bill. I'm gonna tell you. But it's Brent, got any other tax questions? That's
man,
he laid it out
good.
there. You laid it as good,
things
Pat.
I like to kind of. I guess demystify or whatever. Just because, like I said, there's a lot of, I know that some of the agents throwing that stuff out there don't fully understand it that well.
Yeah.
So knowing that, the people on the other side of the table are, maybe just afraid to ask.
The way
They
I
just
take
want to
it-
arm you with some information.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The way I take it is a lot of times those agents will call me and say, I got a client with some 1031 money. That's a way to open the door.
Yeah.
And I said, well, how much they want to spend? Oh, well, I don't know. I said, well, you need to.
Yeah.
That's the thing. And then they, well, let me go. It just, but also, man, I'm going to tell you now, Brent, I know you're new in it, but people with 1031 money, they will shop your cowboy boots off when it comes to a piece of property, because they'll look at it and then they'll get a tank from another guy over here. Well, I'm gonna go look at this one. Now I'm gonna go look at, and they'll think in their minds, I don't want to make the wrong decision. I want to make the best one. And then they wind up buying something. I've had them come to me. There's one, I'm not going to say his name. He came to me and he said, I got $1 million. And he said, I want all hardwood timber. I don't want no cutover. I don't want no pine. I want hardwood timber. I want a turkey hunt. I want a squirrel hunt. He said, that's all I want. I don't want these pine trees. He said, I see enough pine trees driving up and down the roads. I said, okay, well, let's look at that. I had him one. I had him two. I showed him once with hardwood. And they're kind of hard to find. Boom, 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 boom. About 3 months, 4 months went into it, and then you start feeling as a tire kicker, And I said, I ain't wasting no more time with it, because you get to that point.
I had a couple.
Because I've showed you 3 that fits everything you want to. He winds
Found
up
something wrong with it.
He bought 400 acres. Guess what it was?
Plantation.
5-year-old pines. Not a hardwood on the whole thing. And it's just that's the thing. That's part of the business, Brent. I mean,
I'll say this.
You're going to get that guy. They're going to buy something, and that's what really makes you go out there and try to sell them something, because they ain't got to worry about borrowing the money. They ain't got to worry about they ain't got to worry about a partner talking them out of it, or a wife talking them out of it. They got to spend that money. But man, sometimes they will wear your cowboy boots off. Yeah.
For the most part, land buyers are smart. They're usually good with their money, or they wouldn't be here buying land. So it's a different client. It's a different buyer buying land, and these 1031s and some of these more creative things,
plans,
those things they use, because they're.
That's
like
right. They do them.
You've
Yeah.
done it a lot.
Yeah.
You're not gonna teach you new tricks.
Yeah. But it's a good tool, and let me tell you, if you don't have a good accountant, you need to get you a good accountant.
Yeah, absolutely.
When I got in there, and I was with somebody for 20 years and 17, and there's always a time when needs to be a split, and that's in everything in life, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And Aubrey Nichols, which I love him, he was my lawyer, and I knew Pat for years, and he was. Matter of fact, a neighbor, my first house, Pat owns it.
Yeah, that's right.
He owns my first house, and I remember I paid $56,000 for it when I was 22 years old, I think, or 23.
Yeah.
And anyway, I went to Pat, and I've never looked back, and it was a good move.
Yeah.
Been good to me, and so.
Well, look, that's some good information, and
It is.
it's aside from the tax information, it's really. Your property's cool. Like I said, that multi-use property, that's good to hear about. We don't hit on that as much, but there's more cases of people wanting that.
But that's more of a person that's, tired of a hunting club, tired of a lease, tired of not having control.
Yeah.
And now look, if you got the money, and I know a lot of people that are sitting there waiting, and when they get their turn, they're gonna buy one. And Pat, you opened my eyes to. You opened my eyes to the enjoyment, and I really, I've talked about it to a lot of people, and I told Brent, I think we can do a good podcast on what Pat gave me that vision, what he wanted.
Yeah.
Now, and it's just, it was good.
4-wheel trails on your farm.
No, no more than what's there. But I don't have any grand. I got one, but I don't have any that's driving right now. So
yours is small.
So if they're driving, look, I may have to. Paw may have to get through with it. But.
It'll be different then.
Yeah.
Well, look, I appreciate you coming on.
Yeah,
with
thank you.
information.
I appreciate it too.
And that's a good episode. And like I said, we want to maybe bust some myths or demystify some of the things, and talk about. We love talking about land.
That's it.
Thanks for having me on, guys.
Yes, sir.
Heck yeah.
Thank you.
All right. See y'all on the next one.
Bye bye.